So I'm gonna speak a little bit of pastime of Madhavendra Puri. Sri Madhavendra Puri is one great acharya in our disciplic line. From Madhavendra Puri, going up, you have Lakshmi Pati, then 11 more, you get the Madhvacharya. Then going up from Madhvacharya, you get Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva to Narada, Narada to Brahma, Brahma to Krishna. This is a cyclic succession, going from Madhavendra Puri, going up, and coming down from Madhavendra Puri. Then you have anyone? Who's after Madhavendra Puri? Ishvara Puri. Ishvara Puri is very, very important because, why is Ishvara Puri very important? Yes, he's the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not an avatar. Ram is an avatar, Krishna is an avatar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not an avatar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is avatari. It's the same as Krishna. He's the source of all avatars. Krishna is the source of all avatars. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the source of all avatars. So Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. And then from Lord Chaitanya we have the Sada Goswami, the 6 Goswamis. From the 6 Goswamis we have Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, the compiler of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. From Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, you have Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, Shangananda, then you have Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Maladev Vidyabhushan, Jagannath Das Babaji, then on the altar, Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Tagore, Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. And then, from Prabhupada, some of his disciples, such as Gopal Krishna Goswami. This is our illustrious disciplic line. So, Lord Chaitanya, he had many lila. Lord Krishna had many lila. Most people in Bharatvarsh, in India, they know a lot of Krishna lila. They know a lot of Ram lila. The Chaitanya lila, not so much. Because Lord Chaitanya appeared only 540 years back. Krishna 5,000 years. So we have a lot of time to... But Lord Chaitanya only 540 years ago. And Lord Chaitanya, he's not coming as God. But he's coming as his devotee. He's known as Chana Avatar. In the Shastra, he's known as hidden or covered. But in many Shastra, there are reference after reference after reference about Lord Chaitanya and who he actually is. So, on one of his pastimes, Lord Chaitanya, he was traveling, going back to Jagannath Puri, and he stopped in Ramuna. And while there, he was hearing the pastimes or the Leela of Madhavendra Puri, his spiritual master's guru, so his grandfather. Just like many of us, our grandfather is Srila Prabhupada. So what he was hearing was the pastime of Madhavendra Puri, and the Gopinath Devi, Gopal Devi. If I say something that is incorrect, you correct me, okay? I'm subject to error. I'm subject to make mistakes. I'm not perfect. So, the Gopal Devi, Madhavendra Puri had already had the pastime with Chirachori Gopinath. That's the Gopinath Deity. Do we know the story of the pastime of Gopinath Deity? Chirachori stole the yogurt, the kheer for Madhavendra Puri. So, in Govardhan, by Govinda Kund, Madhavendra Puri, he went there trying to be not noticed. And he was there, he was chanting japa, and it was night, he started to fall asleep, he was starting to fade a little bit. But then you know, sometimes when you're not quite asleep, you're not quite asleep, and you're not awake, is that period? And you dream. So he was dreaming, and in the dream, a little boy, beautiful little boy, blackish, came to him in a dream and said, "My name is Gopinath. And I've been outside in the bushes for a long time because the Muslims were coming, and at that time they were known to destroy temples and break the deities. So the Pujari got nervous. This is what was telling Madhavendra. The Pujari got very nervous, so he took me off the altar and he hid, and then he ran away because he was afraid. There's some very... So Gopal came to Madhavendra Puri and he said, "I'm very cold, I've been in these bushes for so long, please come and save me. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, please come and save me." And then he woke up. Sometimes Krishna, or the spiritual master, will come in a dream, seemingly in a dream. It's not an ordinary dream, it's actually spiritual vision. In early 1966, Srila Prabhupada, he went to this retreat in upstate New York with all his young followers. And they were sleeping at night, and one of them was dreaming, and he dreamt of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was a young man, very golden color, just like he's golden already, golden color. And then when he woke up, he told Prabhupada this story about this dream. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. He said, when you dream of the spiritual master of Krishna, it's not an ordinary dream, it's a spiritual. So Madhavendra Puri had this dream, and then he rallied the villagers. They went into the jungle with choppers, and sure enough, they found the deity of Gopinath. And then he had a big ceremony. The first Anuput, the first Anuput was with Krishna, but with Madhavendra Puri, they had Anuput, and all the villagers brought all their rice and dal and different vegetables and chapatis, make stacks and stacks of big Anuput, and installed the deity of Gopinath. This was in Vrindavan. So later, Madhavendra Puri, he put some of his disciples, now he take charge of the deity, and he went on a pilgrimage. He went on a pilgrimage to get some sandalwood, because the hot season was coming. Sandalwood keeps you very cool, keeps you cool. That's good with sandalwood. And we know there's some Chandan Yatras, Chandan festival, Chandan, putting the sandalwood, cool the deity. So he wanted to get some Chandan, so he went on pilgrimage. He went very far to Malaya. The Malaya Hills is where the best sandalwood used to be. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that now, because sandalwood is for devotional purpose, sandalwood is very hard. It's one of the hardest woods, even if you want to build something with sandalwood, very, very hard. But you make the paste, the chandan, it's from the sandalwood. But now they're cutting down the sandalwood trees to plant at this time, rubber. Because the automobile was becoming popular, and the climate was very ideal for the rubber tree. And they would make the rubber, the wheels, the tires from the rubber tree. So they started to chop down all the sandalwood to put up rubber trees. Why? Because there's more money. Every vehicle needs rubber, you can supply rubber. But in Himalaya, it was the sandalwood. So Mahaprabhu goes there, and he gets 70 kilos of sandalwood. And he's going to bring it back all the way back to Gopal. 70 kilos. When you go traveling on the train, go traveling on a plane, you take 70 kilos, that's a lot of luggage. It's very difficult. But usually you put it on a rickshaw, you put it on a car, you put it in a trunk, you put it on a train, you put it on a plane, you put it on a plane, they charge you a lot of money because you're overweight. So much overweight that the plane, in the early days, they used to, the first few times the devotees would come to India, they rented a plane just for the devotees out of Los Angeles. They went from Los Angeles to New York, and then from New York to Delhi. They a jumbo jet. They hired their own jumbo jet. So the whole plane was with devotees. So they go to India and they come back. And when they were in India, they wanted to get a lot of paraphernalia, a lot of devotional clothing for the West, DD paraphernalia, and they were overloaded. And the plane was so heavy to take off, that it was very difficult for the plane to take off. It had to use a full runway. And even then, it was like so hard to take off with so much weight. So a lot of the devotees, he's carrying these 7 kilos. And then he comes to the temple of Gopinath. And I think it's the temple of Gopinath. But then Gopal comes to him in a dream. And he says, you can give this sandalwood to this deity because we're non-different. In other words, Radha Vallabha here, it's Radha Krishna, and in other temples you have Radha Govinda, Radha Mohan, so many Radha Krishna deities, they all look different, they all have a different move, but there's no difference. So he was instructed in a dream by Gopal that you can just hire someone to make the sandalwood and they use it for that deity. And he said, by doing that, you're also doing it for me. So this is the time of that year. So a little bit of Leela about that. Everyone is aware, I'm sure everybody's familiar with when Srila Prabhupada, when he came to the West, what he had with him. What did he bring to the West? Anybody? Yes? You have to speak up. I'm getting all the ears of the audience. 40 rupees. Yeah, 40 rupees. 40 rupees back then was more than 40 rupees today, but yeah. Back then about $8, $10, which, as he said, not even one day spending in New York. That's all he had in the way of money. What else did he have with him? Anybody? Yes, he felt he had something to give. The highest knowledge to Bhagavatam. 3 volumes, first canto. What else did he have? Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Every day he would read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita and he would get his strength to do his mission, to do his preaching mission. Despite he had 2 heart attacks. You know where he had his heart attacks? In the Red Sea. In the Red Sea. One was when he was feeling seasickness when he left Calcutta. He came around Cape Comorin, and then the ship landed again on the other side of India, somewhere in South India. And he was feeling seasickness. He could have He could have got up and said, no, it's too much, I'm old enough to see sickness. And that's just going around, from the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Ocean, the Big Bengal. Relatively calm waters, relatively speaking. But then when he went across and he went through the Red Sea is relatively small. That's when he had his 2 heart attacks. He hadn't even come to the Atlantic Ocean yet. And then when he was going across the Atlantic Ocean, when I think most of you, I know you know, the ocean was as calm as never seen before. Krishna came to him in a dream after he had his 2nd heart attack and said, don't worry, I'm taking charge of the ship. And the captain, Pandya, he said, in all my 30 years of crossing the ocean, I've never seen such a calm, peaceful ocean. So, comes to New York, starts the Hare Krishna movement, and then he comes back to India. And where does he come when he comes back to India? He comes here. He was a Radha and he comes here. He came one time, 1967, and he had a heart attack. So he thought it would be best to come to India to recuperate. So he comes to India with one of his disciples, and Achyutananda, he came here with Achyutananda. I don't necessarily know if it was the first time, but he came with Achyutananda. And he took a taxi from the airport. He took a taxi here. So he has 40 rupees in America. So what did he spend his 40 rupees on? Anyone know? I know you know. Anybody know where he spends his 40 rupees? You can't spend 40 rupees in America. You can't go into a bank and give them 40 rupees and ask to exchange it into American dollars. Nobody's going to accept rupees in America. That's rupees. So he had those 40 rupees with him. When he left America and he came back here, the taxi driver dropped him off. Now you know you can only drive the car down Chandi Chowk, right? And then past the mosque, and then the roads get more narrow, and then no vehicles can go. So the taxi stops there. Prabhupada gives him 40 rupees. He's with his disciple. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning. If you're familiar, you take the planes from America, or you land late at night, or you leave early in the morning. Let's say when we're going, our flight's at midnight, 10 minutes after midnight. So he gets here at 2 a.m. There's no one around. Gives the 40 rupees to the taxi driver. The taxi driver takes the 40 rupees and just leaves. Actually, there was an argument with Prabhupada and the taxi driver because that was way too much to pay for the taxi from the airport. And an argument took place, and Prabhupada said, he cheated me. I wouldn't want to be that taxi driver and cheat Prabhupada. But Prabhupada said, he cheated me. He took the full 40 rupees and it wasn't the proper amount. And that's where the 40 rupees ended up. And some taxi drivers cheating taxi driver's pocket. So, I'm sure that many of you know that this was the place where Srila Prabhupada started to write Srimad Bhagavatam. His life's mission, writing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he started here. And he also revived Back to Godhead magazine. Anybody want to guess what the first book Srila Prabhupada produced when he was here? It was a small book.
Like Easy Journey to Other Planets. Easy Journey to Other Planets.
Yes. Easy Journey to Other Planets. Anybody read that book? It was brilliant. It was brilliant. The book was taking, in the 57, 58, the Russians, they put a Sputnik, Sputnik, a satellite. The first one was a Sputnik, 1957, 58. I remember as a kid going out at night on our balcony. It was big news. It was big news. So everybody on the balcony looking to see if we could see the Sputnik in the sky, flying across the sky. So outer space travel was starting to become very popular. And then there was one physicist who won a Nobel Prize. He won a Nobel Prize in physics. And he was talking about antimatter. So what is antimatter? Jiva, soul. So Prabhupada took those themes, and he compiled it. He compiled it in the book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. And one physicist, he got a copy, and he was very interested in studying further physics on antimatter. Prabhupada used those terms talking about the soul, and everything he said was pure Bhagavad Gita, but written in such a way that there wasn't like verbatim Bhagavad Gita. It was written in such a way and using the terms that the physicists and the jargon of the day, space travel, and that's Easy Journey to Other Planets. He talks about Lord Brahma's day and all these, relativity of time based on different planets and so on and so forth. So that was the first book that Prabhupada produced, and he produced that book. So he started Srimad Bhagavatam on here, and he produced Easy Journey to Other Planets. And the first book that Srila Prabhupada produced in the West, that was published in the West. This is like a high question, high level question. If you know the answer to this, you're a genius. What was the first book Srila Prabhupada produced in the West? Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And everyone thinks it's Bhagavad Gita as it is, right? That's the normal answer. But the first one to come out was Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Both books were at the printers. Bhagavad Gita was at American printers, Macmillan, and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, that was in Japan, Dai Nippon. And you can see the logo is not BBT, ISKCON Press. That was the first logo of the books that were printed. So the first book that was printed was Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It came out 1967, an advanced copy. One of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, I don't want to say the name in case I think I know the name, but I don't know for sure, so I won't say his name in case I say someone else's name. But one of his earliest disciples had left Krishna consciousness. And then he came to visit Srila Prabhupada. And he was, he was apologizing that he has to go, he can't stay. So Prabhupada gave him his only copy, advanced copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is how renounced Srila Prabhupada. The first copy, he didn't even read it himself, he gave it to his disciple, praying and hoping that by reading this book it will encourage him to come back. The Teachings of Lord Chaitanya is basically a synopsis of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, when Srila Prabhupada, another thing that Srila Prabhupada had on the Jaladuta was he had a picture of the Panchatattva. Look at the picture. He kept that with him. Chaitanya Charitamrita, an umbrella, and He didn't know what he was going to eat in America. Box of cereal. He was thinking maybe everything is meat. He was actually mildly surprised when he found an Indian supply store, grocery, where he could get some of his local Indian food stuff. But he was thinking, we hear about America, it's nice, you want some cereal. So this picture, this beautiful little picture, Panchita kept in his wallet. And we know, I think most people know the Lila. When he arrived in America, he went to Butler, Pennsylvania. And then from Butler, Pennsylvania, he went to New York and he met with a Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra was a yoga teacher, uptown yoga teacher, teaching the wealthy, middle-aged ladies yoga. And so Prabhupada was staying with him, but he couldn't preach. He couldn't preach. So Dr. Mishra arranged for a small room, narrow room, was more like a closet in his building as opposed to a room. And Srila Prabhupada was there. He had his trunk as his desk. And some of the youth, one person in particular, his name was Harvey Cohen, he came and started meeting with Prabhupada. Now Harvey Cohen was an artist. He was an artist. So Prabhupada took the picture of Panchita and asked, can you make a painting of this? So, yes, sir. And he made the first painting in ISKCON of Panchita. And Srila Prabhupada ended up in the Bowery. The Bowery. I don't know what the equivalent in Delhi is, but the Bowery was at that time mostly the drug addicts and the winos, the rub-a-dubs. This is where they lived. It was a rundown area of New York. It was the worst. They call it a slum. What's the term used? Skid row. When you don't have anything else, you're on the skids, and you go to Skid Row. It's like where the poorest people have nothing. And there's a lot of crime, and he found a loft. And he was in the loft, and in the loft he had a painting, and he was using the Bhagavad Gita, and he had a Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he was giving classes. And then, one time, he was living there, the boy who he was training up, Stanley, seemed like a nice candidate, the first Western Vaishnava. Prabhupada was very enthusiastic. He's going to bring him back to India and show everyone that yes, it's possible to make Westerners into Vaishnavas. But this boy Stanley, he was a little too attached to LSD, a psychedelic drug. And he took some LSD, went crazy. Prabhupada became fearful. He ran out in the middle of the night on the street in the Bowery. Very dangerous. Now, if you live there during the day and you have things to do, go to the grocery store, go back, go here, go back. You have a place to go to, a place to go from. But when you run out of the place in the middle of the night, nowhere to go, in a very dangerous part of the city. So Prabhupada had a phone number. One person was coming to his classes, he called to put him up for a few days. And then they found the storefront, 2nd Avenue, New York. 26 2nd Avenue. So they moved from the Bowery to the storefront. And when they moved from the Bowery, he had his group of boys that were coming to the store at the Bowery loft, and they carried a tape recorder, a suitcase, and the painting. And they walked from the Bowery to 26 2nd Avenue, and the painting was there. He put it in the window. And if you look at the first bit, you'll see that painting. And that original painting was by Harvey Cohen. Later he became Haridas, And the story goes on. Shall I continue or continue until 7:30? No. Yes. Finish? Continue?
Continue.
Okay, another few minutes. I'll keep on this thread. Is that okay? You following? Is it interesting enough? Or I love Prabhupada,
Yes.
Leela. I just love Prabhupada Leela. And being here, where the foundation of one of his most important Leelas took place, has inspired me to speak more about Prabhupada. Of course, now we'll move forward a little bit. We're in the West. So, one of the disciples that Srila Prabhupada initiated, 26th Avenue, the first initiation was Harikon. And Harikon became Haridas. Haridas received an inheritance, and so with the inheritance he bought a Cadillac, and he was going to drive to the West. So he got the inheritance, bought a Cadillac, and he drove to the West. And later, Srila Prabhupada was invited to San Francisco. They arrived from the airport, and all the devotees, Mukunda, Janaki, they were there. Jamuna was there. Guru Das, Shamsundar, Malati, they were all in San Francisco when they met Prabhupada. Comes out of the airport, and they had a Cadillac. It's an older Cadillac. And Prabhupada gets in and he says, "Where's Haridas?" And Haridas has got a cap on it to ground. He says, "Hare Krishna." Prabhupada, he was driving, it was his Cadillac, he was driving Prabhupada to the temple. The early disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they're all of them are very, very special because they laid the foundation. Many, if not most, may not have gone the distance, but each and every one of them. Prabhupada said that all of you, my disciples, have been sent by my gurus, Bhaktisiddhanta, to help me. He gave every credit, always credit to the spiritual master. This is the test and the proof of a selfless, pure devotee who never takes credit for himself. He always passes it on. Yasya prasada, Bhagavad prasada, Yasya prasada, Nandati and the mercy of the spiritual master, one gets Krishna without the grace of the spiritual master, no spiritual advancement. It all rests on the spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada always gave credit to his spiritual master. And what was his success? I just tried to follow the order of my spiritual master. I'm not a big scholar. I'm an old man. How can I convince them? What have I got to give them? I just depend on the order of my spiritual master. My dear Lord Krishna, when he's on the Jaladuta, my dear Lord Krishna, I do not know why you brought me here. You must have some purpose. I don't know how I'm going to convince them about you. This place is in the mode of passion and ignorance. However, Krishna, if you so desire, you can give me the power to speak for their understanding. So this is a prayer that, it's a paraphrase of the prayer that Prabhupada wrote on the Jaladuta. So that was his wound. So, and that's, so the early disciples of Srila are all special. The Lila Amrita, written by Sastra Maharaj, he got out of the Navy, Stephen something, and he was reading Bhagavad Gita. He had a little penguin. Anyone see the little penguin, paperback penguin copy? I have one of Bhagavad Gita. He kept that in his back pocket. And he lived he was in the Lower East Side of New York. That was like where all the avant-garde, the new things are happening. The intellectuals, or the youth, or the musicians, it's all happening in the Lower East Side. So he used to go and wait for one of his, for his friends. And the place he would meet them would be the alcove. You know what an alcove is? The front, you have a store, you have the door, but the door's not rated against this little, you go inside this little alcove. So he would wait in an alcove for his friends with the Bhagavad Gita in his back pocket. And the name of the storefront? Matchless Gifts. You go wait there, Matchless Gifts. And then one day he was waiting there and he looked in the window. Someone had rented the place. And in the window there was a sign. Bhagavad Gita classes, 7 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He was there before Prabhupada. The Bhagavad Gita in his back pocket. Krishna bringing him again. And there are many pastimes like that. So then, of course, he started, and then he wrote the Prabhupada Lilamrita. The early disciples, many, I agree with Kirtananda, early disciples. They met Prabhupada a year after Prabhupada arrived, because when Prabhupada came to the West, they were going to India. So Prabhupada got on the Jaladuta in Calcutta. They got on the Jaladuta in Calcutta. The same ship. So they got off in Calcutta, Prabhupada got on in Calcutta to come to America. And then a year later they came back to America, and then they met. So again, special. Now, the path of Krishna consciousness is it's like the razor's edge. We often hear that. It's very easy to, you're on a razor, you've got to be careful you fall, you can really put yourself. And Krishna consciousness is like that. So, each and every one of Prabhupada's disciples, regardless of what may have occurred through the course of their devotional service, perhaps they give up Krishna consciousness. One time Srila Prabhupada said, if someone comes and they stay for a while and then they go away, he says there's no loss. Even if they come for a week, even if they come for a day, even if they come for 1 hour, there's no loss, because the seed of bhakti is planted. So they may come for some time and then leave. So the point is sometimes we see even very advanced devotees, even gurus, somehow or other they become entangled in Maya's grip for whatever reason, or have some pastime. And we should never consider finding some criticism. Because, look, who's Lord Brahma? He fell. He fell to the temptation of the sex. Lord Shiva. Of course, these are pastimes. But Lord Shiva, he became attracted to Mohini Murti. Shobhari Muni, such a powerful yogi, was living under the Jamuna River for I don't know how long. It's not like, 2 minutes, hold your breath. He was living under there for the longest time. And just by some offense that he had made to Garuda, he made some offense to Garuda, Garuda's Vaishnava, because he was protecting Kaliya. I believe this. Now, please, if I'm mistaken, sometimes the details may be wrong, but the idea behind it is an important thing. So Kaliya escaped and came to the Jamuna to take shelter, so Garuda, who eats snakes, wouldn't eat him, because he was supposed to be the next snake to be offered to Garuda. So he fled, and he was staying in the lake, and Jabari Muni prevented Garuda from dining on Kaliya's servant. So this was an offense to Guru, and he made a Vaishnava Bhakti. And as a result of that Vaishnava Bhakti, he became attracted to the sex impulse simply by seeing two fish copulating. He became agitated. So he came out of the water and he wanted to enter into household life. Household life is not necessarily a fall down. So don't get that mistaken. Best if you can remain brahmachari. Of the 12 Mahajans, 7 are householders and 5 are brahmacharis. Srila Prabhupada was a householder, Bhaktisiddhanta was a brahmachari. Brahmachari too, sannyas. And so there's no... But in this case it was considered a fall down. So he went to marry some really old knocked on the door, and his 9 daughters, they looked at him and they were completely disgusted, because he'd been living in the water so long, all his skin was wrinkled and he was old and very unattractive. But because he was such a powerful yogi by his extreme austerity, he just transformed himself into a very handsome person. He went to the girl. And all nine daughters, they wanted to marry him, so they married all 9. He was beautiful in many directions, 9 wives. So, because of some slight Vaishnava. And there are many pastimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. How Nityananda was offended by a tax collector. He was in Navadvip, when he was holding the Pongo. He was sitting on the stoop of the tax collector. The tax collector sent his servant out, get rid of these Vaishnavas, get rid of them, they're causing a disturbance. The next thing you know, he was completely impoverished. All his wealth was immediately taken away, just because he made an intense to a Vaishnava. How many here are disciples of Gaura Krishna? You, everybody, most aspiring. Can I speak something about it? Or is it inappropriate? No, it's okay. Anyway, if you make an offense against the devotee, it's a grave error. So I think we'll finish here. Okay? Any questions or comments and anything?
So here I have a question.
Yes. Hare Krishna. You have to make it come closer.
And about realization of Prabhupada and asked something about Srila disciples, and many of the disciples is going to the other ground, and after the 20 and 30 years, 20 and 30 years back, how to we can run this society response as the Srila disciples is working.
It's hard for me to understand. I'm sorry. Did somebody understand?
Yeah.
What is the question? Yes.
So he is asking that from last, like how the Srila Prabhupada's disciples had run this society till now. How greatly the Srila Prabhupada disciples have run this society after 20-30 years. How we have the same enthusiasm to run this society. ऐसे 20-30 साल बाद के बाद चले जाएंगे तो उसके बाद हम कैसे उसे उत्साह
बच्चे 10-20 साल बाद जब चले जाएंगे तो उसके बाद ये राष्ट्रीय सोसाइटी कैसे मतलब इसी में कैसे रहना चाहिए, जबकि हमें मतलब why after the physical person that there is nothing new?
Because there is no physical presence of the Srila Prabhupada disciples, so we could not have the same enthusiasm after 20-30 years. So how could we continue with this, that enthusiasm?
How to remain enthusiastic, Sri Krishna. And of course he's suggesting that because there are no longer disciples or advanced Vaishnavas, so we tend to lose our enthusiasm. Yes. Rupa Goswami Utsava Nishchardaya from Bhagavatam, the third verse of the nectar of instruction. One should have enthusiasm, and that's the first instruction. One should be confident and patient. Those are the three things. So, what is it that gives us confidence to maintain our patience, so we can continue with our enthusiasm? They're all connected. So, confidence comes by the process, primarily hearing. Nityam Bhagavad, regularly hearing. But just to hear is not quite enough. It's best to hear and kirtan, to give. Speak what you hear and share. So, when Prabhupada translated the Srimad Bhagavatam, the verse, Master Krishna, Nityam Bhagavad Seva, Bhagavad by regular, and in the first edition, by regular attendance in classes of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? By the regular attendance in classes, we used to get it. So, especially today, you know, we have the technology is all over that. Just by remaining sadhana, steady in Shravana Kirtanam, then you start to take on the Bhagavatam, it enters and you become more confident. Because you follow this, and this is the result. So you become confident. You hear it again, from this angle, that angle. You develop your confidence. But you also have to be patient. Like Srila Prabhupada, he never lost his confidence or his enthusiasm. He was writing letters of just this person, that person. Most of the letters didn't even landed on deaf ears, never got a response. But he never lost his enthusiasm because he was confident in the words of Krishna. He was confident in the words of his spiritual master. And he went through great struggle, especially after he gave up family life and went into Varanasi. He had nothing. He lost his business. When he had, 2 yogis, 2 purchased, all old and worn. At one point, he didn't even have a place to stay. He would stay at one godbrother's ashram for one night, and it was ashram serving. But he never lost his confidence because of the words of the spiritual master. So if somehow or other we follow the instruction and regularly keep us obeyed and hear from the right source, then that will develop the confidence. And then Krishna, then we have to have the patience. But the confidence will give us patience. And patience and confidence that we get to join Krishna, or enthusiasm. We should not think that just because Prabhupada is no longer present, that everything's stopped. People have that mentality. They give up Krishna consciousness, or they come up with some other idea, or that ISKCON is no longer Prabhupada's movement because they lost their confidence, they lost their patience, and they lost their enthusiasm. Sometimes they take their enthusiasm and they become separated and start something else in the name of Prabhupada. And this is not new. This is old history. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it describes the Chaitanya tree with many branches, and one of the branches it mentions is the Nityananda branch. And it said from the Nityananda branch, many of the branches became separated from the tree. And they started some, even though they claimed to be from the Nityananda tree, they start some different philosophy. And Krishna Das Kaviraj said, and they dry up. There's no fruit. So, we've heard this a few times recently. I was in a class, and being interviewed by the media, one reporter asked, so, Swamiji, what will happen when you die? What will happen to your movement when you die? Anyone know what his answer was? Yes. He said, I will never die. And when he said that, all the disciples said, Haribo! Yeah, I'll never die. Because you know Prabhupada, not by his physical presence. Yes, when you're in the, there's certainly there's a Shakti there. But he's not different than his books. His life is not different than his books. What he's writing is what he's living. So if you're seeing what he's living and you're hearing what he's living, there's no difference. So he's present. But the problem is that we have the concept that we have to have some physical presence. And there's no doubt. If you have an opportunity to have physical association with an advanced Vaishnava, then don't all just take a recording in the ear. No, render some personal service because you get some benefit. But the real instruction is the body. And it is difficult when a spiritual master or advanced devotee departs, especially if you have a lot of close association. And a lot of Prabhupada's religious disciples, they also left because when Prabhupada left, but then there were others who followed his Vani, never gave up on his Vani. Prabhupada himself, he only met his spiritual master a few times. He was wholly and solely functioning on his Vani. Bhaktisiddhanta, he likes to hear. I have marked him. I will give him the name. What was Prabhupada's name? Aboy. His name is Aboy Charan. I have marked him. His name is Aboy Charanaravinda. That's what AC stands for, Charanaravinda. And he gave Prabhupada first and second at the same time, which is rare, because he likes to hear. Of the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam is the most important. Anything we know is from the ear. Anything. What is this? Mobile phone. Why do you know that's a mobile phone? Because someone said this is a mobile phone. First the ear, then the eye. So the hearing is, and we know that the ear is the most actually, the tongue has 2 functions. So some say the tongue is the strongest sense, and we do right? Most difficult, because it's 2 functions, talking and tasting. But the ear is the most sensitive. Then the example, you're at night, he comes, you can't see him, but you can hear him. So it's very important. And that's what I've always counted on. And just to hear on your own, if you don't have someone to share with, you can hear on your own, that's okay, but it's always better. So if you can get into the habit of attending the classes, either morning and evening, or one, maybe not the other, but the more you can, but when they become regulated, then it just becomes part of your life. I use this example. Prabhupada uses this example also. A alcoholic You taste the drink of alcohol. What is it like? And of course, none of you know, but I don't. Because it's not nice. But you take another, next thing you know, you're an alcoholic. So when you start to hear, maybe it's not so nice. When you do a little more, then you become a hearaholic, a shravanaholic. Can't stop hearing. And even if we're hearing and we're giving instruction, maybe we won't be overly enthusiastic to follow the instruction, but if we can follow some of the instruction, or at least we know what we should be doing, then that gives us confidence, patience, and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Can you explain in that cell?
No, it's okay. I can actually hear clearer if you just don't use the microphone. Don't use it, but speak loud.
Prabhu, can you please explain in nutshell that one past time of Srila Prabhupada that he was in a flight
Yes.
and like Srila Prabhupada doesn't eat flight meal
Yeah.
which was offered in flight all the passengers. So one air hostess Prabhupada carried chivda like
Of the race.
puffed rice. Prabhupada carried puffed rice with him. So one air hostess like eaten and he
You tell everybody.
yes.
You've got the pastime. You tell. Hare Krishna. We're being summoned. It's time to go. We'll be there shortly. I'll call you in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So that air hostess eats that puff rice, and he belongs to South America.
Yes.
Yes. So when Prabhupada sent some of his disciples to preach in South America, then he was surprised that in our station how